So here's the thing. I don't even know where to start with this, but when did you decide that this was going to be your career, and not necessarily where you are now, but as a personal trainer before? Because you worked as a personal trainer at a couple of gyms, um, national gyms. When did you decide that was going to be your thing?
That's a great question. So if you recall, I worked at a gym when I was in high school. Similar to your job in Bismarck, like they kind of left me alone there. And so I would, check people in the front desk. I'd also sell memberships and make protein shakes and clean everything. I used to chill out at the sauna after hours. And so I had worked in a gym. I kind of got interested in fitness. I don't know if you kind of remember this, but I remember specifically like an incident where I got in a fight in middle school. At which it was a terrible fight. The kid punched me in the face and I didn't do anything. So not much of a fight. But I remember mom buying husky clothes for me once. And I remember not knowing exactly what that was and what that meant, but just that it wasn't great. So I started lifting weights in middle school and wanted to kind of get stronger. I was interested in sports as well at that time. Not only hockey, but I got into football and was trying to play football and whatever, which was a huge mistake for hockey. But anyway, I worked at that gym in high school doing all kinds of different stuff. At the time, Lance Armstrong was also, winning Tours de France. And I got into cycling, got into heart rate monitor training. And so, fast forward a few years from there, when the club opened up that you mentioned, the big company opened their only location here in Utah. My ex-wife and I joined when they basically first opened. And I started watching the personal trainers and watching the staff do what they were doing, and I thought it was interesting. And they were also using heart rate monitors with their clients, which I knew a lot about heart rate monitors. It was both of you. I'm not sure if it was more you or mom that gave me that TV VCR combo for college, and I returned it to buy a heart rate monitor.
I did not know that.
Maybe I kept it a secret from you. I think mom found out and she was pissed. I remember it not being taken very well.
Man.
But yeah, it was like doing my bike rides and recording heart rate and tracking that kind of thing. And so when they brought me, when I decided just as like a stopgap, I was studying architecture kind of at the time in college, working at this gym as a stopgap. I thought, hey, this would be fun to, work as a trainer, at least temporarily while I'm, continuing to go through school, whatever. I was just working at the bike shop at the time. And so I went into the manager's office. He described me as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I went in and asked him like what certification I needed to get, and he told me. I went and got it and started there in March of 2007. And so I never really intended that was going to be like my career. Kind of like you, like there's not a lot of personal trainers that do this as a career for a really long time. It's a, very kind of sales oriented and commission based job. And so good personal trainers often get recruited as like selling medical devices and that kind of thing. It was basically, they brought me on as a personal trainer. I learned about training, had some experience there, but right off the bat, when they brought me in, I knew more about heart rate monitors than anybody on their staff. And so immediately I kind of found my niche and was able to educate the rest of the staff and that kind of thing. And that eventually led to me just continuing to do that. So, yeah.
I hope listeners discovered this as you were talking. Whenever you do something, and I noticed this since you were a little kid, whenever you did something, you would jump in full on. I mean, you were just, whatever it was, you were all about it, and it was like all encompassing, and you had to do everything in your power to learn everything about it and do everything. I mean, when you got into hockey, you bought that little sliding thing to just practice going sideways in your socks in the basement. And I don't know how many dents you put into our garage door, firing shots at the net, missing and hitting.
Missing?
Were you aiming at the door? So just everything you did full. And when you got into biking, it was just like all encompassing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should tell this story. This was me being stupid, but when we went to Hawaii on a trip and you wanted to take your bike and go biking, and I'm like, dude, this is a trip for the family. Just, we need to be, and you go, no, I want a bike. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so you wanted to take, like, would you take like a wheel and your shoes or something?
Yeah. And then rented a bike and put the family through whatever for me to do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
So yeah, that drove me crazy. But again, it's just that's you. You were full in. When you did something, you did it all in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, for better or worse, been a part of my personality. Like if I, there was a time when I got into photography, and for like 3 or 4 months, I wanted to learn everything there was to know about photography, how to work the apertures and f-stops and all that stuff. Yeah, same with hockey, same with anything I've ever gotten into. I've gotten way, way, way deep in, for sure.
That's crazy.
Funny that you notice that from a young age. And I even think things like ice hockey, like part of what I liked about ice hockey is like wearing the equipment and the kit, and like the same with cycling. It's like this proper thing, and you get into that space and that zone.
Well,
for whatever reason.
When you played Little League Baseball, you wanted to be a catcher because they had the most equipment.
Most stuff. Yeah,
you just wanted to wear everything you
that
could.
Makes sense.
It's just you wanted to be the best. That's and in that regard, you were like me a little bit, because when I was growing up and played basketball, I'd just go out and I would chisel ice off the driveway in the winter so I could go out and shoot free throws and practice. And then with golf, I spent more time hitting balls than I did playing, because I always thought that if I could get a good swing, and I could suck right now, but that good swing would serve me well throughout my life. And so I just practiced, and my friends would just want to play, and I'd hit balls. I'd just go to the range and hit balls all day long.
And it was self-motivated. It wasn't for anybody making you.
No. Yeah. Unlike my brother would spray a ball over here and spray the ball back over here and then chip it up and one putt for a par. But I was more interested in like keeping it in the fairway, getting on the green, and two putting for a par. It was more, for me, it was like more aesthetics. I looked at pro golfers, good golfers, and that's how they played, and I wanted to be like that. And I think the same thing. You whenever you did something, you wanted to do it correctly and learn everything you could about it.
Yeah.
So
sounds like me.
Yeah. So you get into that, and I appreciated all the help you used to give me. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and I don't know if I'm skipping steps here, but you preached one thing for a long time, and then suddenly you turned to something else. And in my opinion, I think whatever you believe, you can find it on the internet, right? I mean, whatever you believe, you can find stuff on the internet to support your position. Not you, but people in general. And you're teaching like food prep. I remember you got me into food prep and eating less food, more times a day, more meals. And now it's you're preaching intermittent fasting, a lot of protein. What is it? Keto? How do you say that?
Ketogenic.
Yeah, ketogenic and carnivore diets. So when did that change for you?
Yeah.
And why?
Great question. And I love and appreciate that you and I have been able to have so many like open and honest chats about this. And I know today I want the honest like questions. It's really great. So gym culture, I was only certified as a nutritionist in 2017 is when I got that certification. If you recall, I was working in the western region of this company, which required lots of travel, which means I wasn't in my home club very much, and our pay is based on commission. So I was selling less for the company because I was traveling more, but since my numbers were down, they demoted me. And I lost that, which was my favorite position I've ever had in my career. And it was a pretty dark time in my life and a really hard time, but I decided then that I wanted to like reinvest in myself. And I bought this certification, which was a few $1,000s.
I remember you doing that. And I'm like, this seems like a mistake.
Man. Yeah. I mean, financially, I remember getting a check that was 3 digits, like in the hundreds. And that spring of 2017. And I was getting married in a few months, and I tried to shield Bethany from all of that, but I was in a really, really dark place where I was like, my business was not where it needed to be. If I was only going to be a personal trainer, again, as the regional guy traveling around, it was different. And I got a different kind of pay structure that was more based on how the program was doing in the West. But once I lost that again, like I was in a really dark place. And again, remembering that some of the paychecks I got were 3 digits, were not great, especially for somebody who's just going to get married. But anyway, I decided to invest in myself and do that nutrition certification. I'd always been interested in it. And at the time, it had been several years where I'd already been exposed to this idea that fat in the diet was actually a really good thing. So in 2012, we had a guy that was training endurance athletes, which I had done with cycling. And he was feeding world-class triathletes a lot of fat and protein and not a lot of carbohydrates. And they were burning more fat, and their endurance was improving.
Which is totally different than what people assume. Like I remember when I was a kid, if you were going to run a marathon, you carbo loaded.
Carbo.
You would eat spaghetti and pancakes before the race.
Yeah.
It was all about carbs.
Yeah. And that's how I competed as well. All that kind of stuff. And this guy's on the phone. He wasn't working for the company. It was more like a consultation. He was using the same like metabolic carts that we were using to validate all this stuff. And he's like, I'm feeding triathletes bacon and butter and cream, and they're not bonking. They're not running out of carbohydrate energy. And understanding, it sounded so bizarre. This took me a long time to really understand and appreciate. But essentially, like if you store so little carbohydrate in the body that you either need to top it off all the time if you're burning through it, or you'll run out of energy, or you can teach the body to run on the other energy system, which is fat. And you do that primarily by training in the proper intensities, but also changing your diet, eating more fat.
That's interesting, but there's a lot of people out there who totally disagree with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's almost like your voice in the wilderness. I know it's getting bigger and more popular. People are jumping on that bandwagon, but for a long time, that was like you were just kind of ostracized.
Sure. And even athletes in the Tour de France are consuming, some of them up to like 125, 150 grams of carbohydrate every hour as they're competing. So it's definitely, you can burn carbohydrates as a fuel source. It's fine. And at top levels of performance, you probably need some of that. But the level that I was at, just understanding that if you switch burning the carbohydrate fuel for the fat fuel, your endurance would improve because you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of calories of stored fat in the body. And so that helped my own cycling. That was kind of like the first step. Another step was encountering the work of an author and journalist, Nina Teicholz. And she wrote a book called The Big Fat Surprise, which came out in 2014. And I remember I listened to a radio interview that she did with, it's Radio West, the Radio West program. I think it's local here. Fabrizio, I think is the host name. Anyway, he's local to Salt Lake Valley, and he did a radio interview where, he's talking to this woman who is uncovering the history behind why we think fat and saturated fat in particular is bad for us. And maybe we got it wrong by chasing down saturated fat and cholesterol. And so I was aware of her work. It took me 2 years to actually read her book all the way through. Like, I didn't pick up the book, even though it was available in 2014, until 2016, according to my Facebook like time hop thing. And I think it was an internal resistance to the idea that if this woman is right, then we're all wrong. And that we've been told in the fitness industry, lean proteins, lots of whole grains, frequent meals, like you mentioned, lots of fruits and vegetables. So again, this was a really unconventional type of approach. And again, I think I resisted that idea.